The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Whitmore Palace as Catherine walked through the portrait gallery. Her heels clicked softly against the cold stone, echoing in the vast corridor lined with paintings of monarchs past. Today marked the 15th anniversary of Queen Isabella's passing, and the entire palace seemed to hold its breath in remembrance. Catherine had married into the Whitmore royal family 5 years ago, but she still felt like an outsider walking through these hallowed halls. The weight of tradition pressed down on her shoulders like an invisible crown, heavier than any tiara she had ever worn. Every portrait seemed to watch her with knowing eyes, as if questioning whether she truly belonged among their ranks. As she approached the memorial chamber, Catherine's steps slowed. Through the partially open doors, she could see the soft glow of candles illuminating Queen Isabella's portrait. The late Queen's sapphire necklace, her most treasured possession, rested in a glass case beneath the painting. Isabella had worn it on every important occasion during her reign, and it had become as much a symbol of her legacy as the crown itself. The necklace was extraordinary, a cascade of deep blue sapphires surrounded by diamonds, each stone carefully selected by master craftsmen from across the kingdom. Legend said it had been blessed by ancient priests to bring wisdom and strength to whoever wore it. Isabella had received it as a wedding gift from her husband, King Edmund, and it had never left her side until her final days. Catherine entered the chamber quietly, not wanting to disturb the peaceful atmosphere. The room smelled of fresh lilies and burning candles, creating an almost sacred ambience. She knelt before the memorial, her silk dress pooling around her feet like water. This ritual had become important to her over the years, a way to connect with the woman who had shaped the monarchy she now served. "Good morning, Your Majesty," Catherine whispered to the portrait. Isabella's painted eyes seemed to sparkle with life, her gentle smile offering comfort across the years. "I hope you're watching over us today." The chamber door creaked open behind her, and Catherine turned to see Prince Alexander, her husband, entering with measured steps. His face was somber, dressed in a formal military uniform reserved for state occasions. Even after 5 years of marriage, Alexander remained somewhat of a mystery to her. He carried the weight of his mother's memory like a sacred burden, rarely speaking of her except in formal settings. "The ceremony begins in an hour," Alexander said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ministers are gathering in the throne room." Catherine nodded, rising gracefully from her kneeling position. "I would just pay my respects." She was a remarkable woman. Alexander's jaw tightened slightly. She was everything a queen should be. Strong, wise, beloved by the people. Her shoes are... He paused, struggling with the words. They're difficult shoes to fill. The unspoken comparison hung in the air between them like a sword. Catherine had always known she was being measured against Isabella's memory, but Alexander rarely voiced it so directly. The people still mourned their beloved queen, and many questioned whether Catherine, a commoner who had married into royalty, could ever truly replace her. "I don't seek to replace her," Catherine said softly. "I only hope to honor her memory in my own way." Alexander's expression softened slightly. "I know, and you do in many ways." He moved closer to the memorial case, his eyes fixed on the sapphire necklace. She used to say that this necklace held the spirit of every queen who came before her. Nonsense, of course, but she believed it gave her strength. Catherine studied the necklace more closely. In the candlelight, the sapphires seemed to pulse with their own inner fire. Each stone was perfectly cut, reflecting the flames in mesmerizing patterns. The craftsmanship was unlike anything she had ever seen, delicate gold work intertwined with the stones like vines, creating an organic, living appearance. "It's beautiful," Catherine breathed. She must have felt so connected to history when she wore it. "She did," Alexander replied, his voice distant with memory. "Father had it made for their wedding day. He searched the entire kingdom for the perfect sapphires. The story goes that he wanted something as deep and eternal as his love for her." The romantic tale made Catherine's heart ache slightly. She and Alexander's marriage had been arranged for political reasons, though genuine affection had grown between them over time. Still, she sometimes wondered what it would feel like to be loved with such passionate devotion that someone would move mountains to create something beautiful just for her. As they stood together in the memorial chamber, Catherine noticed how the morning light streaming through the stained glass windows created rainbow patterns on the floor. The effect was magical, as if Isabella's spirit was blessing the space with color and warmth. For a moment, Catherine felt a strange pull toward the necklace, as if it was calling to her. "Alexander," she said hesitantly, "do you think she would have wanted someone to wear it again? To keep her memory alive through action rather than just remembrance?" Alexander's head snapped toward her, his eyes wide with surprise. "What do you mean? I mean, perhaps keeping it locked away isn't what she would have wanted. She was a woman of action, wasn't she? Someone who believed in using power to help people." "She was," Alexander admitted slowly. "But this necklace, it's sacred. No one has touched it since her funeral. Father specifically ordered it to remain here, untouched, as a permanent memorial." Catherine nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. King Edmund had never fully recovered from losing Isabella. He had retreated into himself, leaving much of the daily governance to Alexander while he wandered the palace like a ghost of his former self. The necklace had become a symbol of his grief, a tangible connection to the woman he had lost. "Of course," Catherine said. "I didn't mean to suggest. I just sometimes wonder if we honor her memory more through living as she lived, or through preserving everything exactly as she left it." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. The sound of distant bells reminded them that the memorial ceremony was approaching. Soon, hundreds of dignitaries, nobles, and citizens would gather to remember Queen Isabella's contributions to the kingdom. Catherine would stand beside Alexander, playing her role as the current princess, always conscious of how she measured against the beloved queen's memory. "We should go," Alexander said finally. "The ministers will be expecting us." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Catherine took one last look at the sapphire necklace. In that moment, she could have sworn she saw something flicker in the stones, a brief flash of light that seemed almost like recognition. It was probably just a trick of the candlelight, but it left her with a strange feeling of connection. They walked together through the palace corridors, past tapestries depicting great moments in the kingdom's history. Servants bowed respectfully as they passed, their faces solemn in recognition of the day's significance. Catherine had learned to move with the measured grace expected of royalty, but sometimes she missed the freedom of her former life, when she could walk without every step being scrutinized and analyzed. The throne room was already filling with guests when they arrived. Ministers in their formal robes, foreign ambassadors in their finest attire, and citizens who had been selected to represent the general population. Everyone rose as Alexander and Catherine entered, the rustle of fabric and clinking of jewelry creating a symphony of respect. King Edmund sat on his throne, looking older than his 65 years. His once proud shoulders were now stooped with grief and responsibility. He acknowledged his son and daughter-in-law with a slight nod, his eyes holding the distant look that had become his constant companion since Isabella's death. As the ceremony began with traditional prayers and readings, Catherine found her mind wandering back to the memorial chamber. There had been something about standing near that necklace that felt different, almost electric. She had felt connected to something larger than herself, as if Isabella's spirit was trying to communicate across the years. The minister's voice droned on, recounting Isabella's many achievements, her charitable works, her diplomatic successes, her role in modernizing the kingdom while preserving its traditions. Catherine listened respectfully, but she was also observing the faces in the crowd. She could see the genuine love and loss in their expressions. Isabella hadn't just been their queen. She had been their symbol of hope and strength. During the moment of silence, Catherine closed her eyes and made a silent promise to Isabella's memory. She would find her own way to serve the people, to be worthy of the trust they had placed in the royal family. She might never be Isabella, but she could be the best version of herself. As the ceremony concluded and Guests began to file out. Catherine noticed several elderly women approaching her. They were dressed in the simple but dignified clothing of the working class, their faces weathered by years of hard labor, but bright with intelligence and determination. "Your Royal Highness," one of them said, curtsying awkwardly. "We wanted to thank you for visiting our district last month. Your help with the children's school meant everything to us." Catherine smiled warmly, remembering her visit to their impoverished neighborhood. She had been working quietly to improve conditions in the kingdom's forgotten corners, following Isabella's example of caring for all citizens, not just the wealthy and powerful. "It was my honor," Catherine replied sincerely. "Education is the key to breaking the cycle of poverty." Queen Isabella understood that. The women's faces lit up at the comparison. "She did," another woman agreed. "And we can see her spirit in you, if you don't mind us saying so, Your Highness." Different maybe, but the same heart. As the women moved away, Catherine felt a warmth spreading through her chest. Perhaps she didn't need to be exactly like Isabella to honor her memory. Perhaps she could create her own path, guided by the same principles of service and compassion. Alexander appeared at her side, having finished his formal duties. "You handle that well," he said. "They respect you." "I hope so," Catherine replied. "I want to be worthy of their trust." "You are," Alexander said, and for the first time in months, his smile seemed genuine. "Mother would have liked you. She always said that true nobility comes from the heart, not from bloodlines." As they walked back through the palace together, Catherine felt a shift in their relationship. The conversation in the memorial chamber had opened something between them, a new understanding and possibility for deeper connection. Maybe their marriage could become something more than just a political alliance. But even as hope bloomed in her heart, Catherine couldn't shake the image of that sapphire necklace. Something about it called to her, as if it held secrets that could change everything. She didn't know then that her instincts were right, or that within days, a simple moment of curiosity would set in motion events that would transform not just her life, but the entire kingdom. The sapphire legacy was waiting, and Catherine was about to become its next guardian. Whether she was ready or not, 3 days after the memorial ceremony, Catherine found herself unable to concentrate on her usual duties. The image of Queen Isabella's sapphire necklace haunted her thoughts like a beautiful ghost. During meetings with charity organizers, while reviewing correspondence, even during quiet moments with Alexander, her mind kept drifting back to that glass case and the mysterious pull she had felt. The palace seemed different to her now, as if she was seeing it through new eyes. Every portrait, every piece of royal jewelry on display, every ceremonial object seemed to whisper stories of the past. She began to understand that she wasn't just living in a grand house. She was dwelling within layers of history, each generation adding their own chapter to the continuing story of the Whitmore dynasty. On Thursday morning, Catherine made an excuse to return to the memorial chamber. She told her ladies-in-waiting that she wanted to place fresh flowers before Isabella's portrait, but, truthfully, she was drawn by something she couldn't name. The chamber was empty when she arrived, lit only by the eternal candles that burned day and night in Isabella's honor. Standing before the glass case again, Catherine studied the necklace with new intensity. The sapphires seemed to shift and change in the candlelight, sometimes appearing deep navy blue, other times shimmering with hints of purple and green. The gold setting was a masterwork of delicate craftsmanship, with tiny diamonds nestled between the larger stones like stars in a midnight sky. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Catherine jumped, spinning around to find Lord Reginald, the palace's elderly historian, standing in the doorway. His white hair and gentle manner had always reminded her of a kindly grandfather, though his mind was sharp as a steel blade when it came to royal history. "Lord Reginald," Catherine said, placing a hand over her racing heart. "You startled me. Forgive me, Your Highness. I didn't mean to intrude." He entered the chamber slowly, his walking stick tapping against the marble floor. "I come here often myself. There's something peaceful about this place." Catherine nodded, grateful for the company. "I find myself drawn here as well. There's so much history in that necklace." Lord Reginald's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm he always showed when discussing the palace's treasures. "Ah, you have excellent instincts, Your Highness. That necklace has quite a story. Would you like to hear it?" "Very much," Catherine replied, settling into one of the velvet chairs arranged near the memorial. Lord Reginald leaned heavily on his walking stick, his voice taking on the cadence of a master storyteller. The sapphires were discovered in the ancient mines of the northern mountains, in a cave system that had been sealed for centuries. King Edmund spent 2 years having them excavated personally, believing they held special significance. "Special how?" Catherine asked, fascinated. "Legend says those particular mines were blessed by the first queen of Whitmore, Queen Melody, over 400 years ago. She was said to possess gifts of foresight and wisdom that guided the kingdom through its darkest times. Before her death, she supposedly blessed the deepest chamber of mines, declaring that stones found there would carry her spirit forward to future generations." Catherine felt a shiver run down her spine. "Do you believe the legend?" Lord Reginald smiled mysteriously. "I believe that Queen Isabella wore that necklace during every major decision of her reign, and somehow she never made a wrong choice. Coincidence? Perhaps, but the results speak for themselves." "What kind of decisions?" Catherine pressed. "Everything from preventing wars through brilliant diplomacy to knowing exactly which advisors to trust. She once wore it to a crucial negotiation with the neighboring kingdom of Aldris. They were demanding impossible tributes that would have bankrupted our people. Isabella listened to their demands while wearing the necklace, then made a counter-proposal that turned potential enemies into our strongest allies. The Valdres ambassador later said he felt compelled to accept her terms, as if she possessed an almost supernatural understanding of what would truly benefit both kingdoms." Catherine's pulse quickened. "Were there other instances?" "Many," Lord Reginald confirmed. "The year of the Great Plague, she wore it while reviewing medical reports and somehow identified the source of the disease when her best physicians were baffled. During the economic crisis of her 7th year as queen, she wore it to meetings with merchants and crafted policies that not only restored prosperity, but created the strongest economy our kingdom had ever seen." "It's remarkable," Catherine murmured, her eyes fixed on the necklace. "Almost as if what, Your Highness?" Catherine hesitated, then decided to voice her thoughts. "As if the necklace itself was guiding her. I know it sounds foolish, but when I stood near it the other day, I felt something, a kind of awareness." Instead of dismissing her words, Lord Reginald nodded thoughtfully. "Not foolish at all, Your Highness. Queen Isabella herself confided something similar to me once, shortly before her illness. She said the necklace seemed to grow warm when important decisions needed to be made, and that wearing it helped her see beyond the obvious to the deeper truths of any situation." "She spoke to you about it?" Catherine asked, surprised. "I was her personal historian for 30 years, Your Highness. She trusted me with many secrets." Lord Reginald paused, studying Catherine's face carefully. Perhaps it's time one of those secrets was shared. Catherine leaned forward eagerly. "What do you mean?" "Queen Isabella left specific instructions about the necklace. Instructions that King Edmund has never been told, at her specific request. She was concerned that his grief would prevent him from carrying out her wishes." Catherine's heart began to race. "What instructions?" Lord Reginald looked around the chamber, ensuring they were truly alone. "She wanted the necklace to be worn again by the next queen who proved herself worthy. Not through bloodline or marriage arrangements, but through genuine service to the people and real understanding of what it means to lead with wisdom and compassion." "But there's no next queen," Catherine said slowly. "I'm only a princess, and I may never. Queens are not always born to thrones, Your Highness," Lord Reginald interrupted gently. "Sometimes they're chosen by circumstances, by their actions, by the needs of their people. Queen Isabella believed that her successor would reveal herself through her deeds, not her title." Catherine sat in stunned silence, trying to process what she was hearing. "Are you suggesting that she meant for me to?" "I'm not suggesting anything, Your Highness. I'm simply sharing Queen Isabella's words. She believed that when the right person came along, the necklace itself would call to them, and they would know, deep in their heart, that they were meant to carry on its legacy. The chamber fell quiet except for the soft flickering of candles. Catherine stared at the necklace, feeling that same mysterious pull she had experienced before. It was stronger now, as if the sapphires were responding to her presence with increasing intensity. "Lord Reginald," she said quietly, "what would happen if I were to— Were to what, Your Highness?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Were to touch it? Just for a moment." Lord Reginald's eyes sparkled with something that might have been anticipation. "Queen Isabella's instructions were quite specific about that as well, Your Highness. She said that the right person would know what to do when the moment came, and that no one should prevent them from following their instincts." Before Catherine could lose her nerve, she stood and approached the glass case. Her hands trembled slightly as she found the small latch that secured the display. Lord Reginald made no move to stop her, watching silently as she lifted the glass cover. The moment the barrier was removed, Catherine felt a rush of energy that made her skin tingle. The necklace seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, the sapphires pulsing like a gentle heartbeat. Without conscious thought, she reached out and placed her fingertips against the central stone. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Visions flooded her mind, not chaotic or frightening, but clear and purposeful. She saw Queen Isabella as a young woman, receiving the necklace from King Edmund with tears of joy streaming down her face. She witnessed private moments of Isabella's reign, late-night strategy sessions where she wore the necklace and somehow found solutions to impossible problems, quiet conversations with suffering citizens where she touched the sapphires and immediately understood what help they needed most. But the visions went deeper than Isabella's memories. Catherine saw Queen Melody, the legendary first queen, standing in the mountain cave where the sapphires were originally found. She watched as Melody pressed her hands against the stone walls and spoke words of blessing, imbuing the gems with something beyond mere beauty, a connection to the wisdom and strength of every woman who had ever led with courage and compassion. When the visions faded, Catherine found herself holding the necklace, though she couldn't remember picking it up. The weight of it was surprising, not heavy, but substantial, as if it carried the accumulated experiences of centuries. The sapphires were warm against her palm, pulsing gently in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Your Highness," Lord Reginald said softly, "how do you feel?" Catherine considered the question carefully. "Different," she said finally, "like I can see things more clearly, feel things more deeply, as if there's a voice in my mind that wasn't there before, offering guidance and strength." "That would be the blessing taking effect," Lord Reginald explained. Queen Isabella described it similarly when she first put on the necklace. She said it didn't change who she was, but it amplified her natural instincts and connected her to the wisdom of all the queens who came before. Catherine lifted the necklace, studying how the light played through the sapphires. "Should I put it on?" "Only if you feel called to, Your Highness. The choice must be yours alone." Without hesitation, Catherine fastened the necklace around her throat. The moment the clasp closed, she felt a surge of confidence and clarity unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was as if a fog she hadn't realized was there had suddenly lifted, revealing the world in sharp, brilliant detail. She could sense things now, the genuine warmth in Lord Reginald's smile, the way the palace itself seemed to welcome the necklace's return to active use, even the distant emotions of servants and guards going about their daily duties. But, more than that, she could feel the needs of the kingdom itself. The struggling farmers in the eastern provinces, the merchants worried about trade negotiations, the mothers in the capital hoping for better schools for their children. "It's extraordinary," Catherine whispered, her hand instinctively moving to touch the central sapphire. "I can feel so much, understand so much that was hidden before." "The necklace doesn't give you power, Your Highness," Lord Reginald explained. "It reveals the power you already possessed. Queen Isabella always said that true leadership comes from the heart, and The necklace simply helps that heart see more clearly. Catherine was about to respond when the chamber door burst open. Prince Alexander strode in, his face flushed with anger and concern. He stopped short when he saw Catherine wearing the necklace, his expression shifting rapidly from anger to shock to something that might have been fear. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Catherine, what have you done?" The confrontation Catherine had hoped to avoid had arrived, and she could feel through the necklace's influence that this moment would determine not just her future, but the future of the entire kingdom. The sapphires pulsed with gentle warmth against her throat, offering strength and wisdom for the challenge ahead. Everything was about to change, and there was no going back. That Alexander's face had gone pale, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Catherine, take it off. Now." The command in his voice might have once made her comply immediately, but with the necklace around her throat, Catherine felt a strength she had never possessed before. She could sense the complex emotions radiating from her husband, not just anger, but fear, grief, and something deeper that surprised her, relief. "Alexander," she said calmly, "I can't do that." "Can't." His voice rose dangerously. "You can't, or you won't." "Both," Catherine replied, her hand moving instinctively to touch the central sapphire. The gem pulsed warmly under her fingertips, sending waves of clarity through her thoughts. "This necklace belongs with someone who will use it to serve the people. Your mother understood that." "Don't you dare speak for my mother," Alexander snapped, taking a step forward. "You have no right to wear her necklace, no right to claim her legacy." Lord Reginald cleared his throat quietly. "Your Highness," he said to Alexander, "perhaps you should hear what Queen Isabella herself—" "Silence." Alexander whirled on the elderly historian. "Lord Reginald, you will return that necklace to its case immediately, and we will pretend this violation never happened." "I cannot do that, Your Highness," Lord Reginald replied with gentle firmness. "I am bound by oath to carry out Queen Isabella's final wishes." Alexander's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What final wishes?" "Father made the decision about the necklace. It was to remain here, untouched forever. King Edmund made that decision in his grief," Lord Reginald explained. "But Queen Isabella had already given me different instructions, sealed and witnessed, written in her own hand during her final weeks." The historian reached into his robes and withdrew a folded parchment bearing the royal seal. Alexander stared at it, as if it were a poisonous snake. "Read it," Catherine said softly, the necklace giving her insight into Alexander's internal struggle. "You owe your mother that much." With trembling hands, Alexander took the parchment and broke the seal. His eyes moved rapidly across the elegant script, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to something approaching wonder. When he finished reading, he looked up at Catherine with an expression she had never seen before. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew you would come." Catherine felt a shiver run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Alexander's voice was barely audible as he read aloud. "When a woman appears who serves without seeking reward, who leads with compassion rather than command, who places the needs of our people above her own comfort, she will be drawn to this necklace as surely as iron to a magnet. Do not prevent her from claiming her birthright, for she will be the queen our kingdom needs, regardless of the blood in her veins or the crown on her head." The chamber fell silent except for the flickering candles. Catherine touched the necklace again, feeling its warmth pulse in rhythm with her heart. "There's more," Alexander continued, his voice stronger now. "She writes about signs to watch for, acts of service that mark the true heir to her legacy. Catherine, she describes your work with the children's schools, your visits to the poorest districts, even your habit of listening to servants' concerns. She wrote this 3 years before you ever set foot in this palace." Catherine felt tears welling in her eyes. "How could she have known?" "Mother always said she had dreams," Alexander replied slowly. "Visions that came to her when she wore the necklace. She claimed she could see glimpses of the future, paths the kingdom might take depending on the choices made in the present." Lord Reginald nodded solemnly. Queen Isabella believed the necklace connected her not just to past queens, but to future ones as well. She spoke of seeing a young woman with kind eyes and strong hands who would bring healing to divisions within the royal family and prosperity to the common people. "This is madness," Alexander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Even if Mother wrote these things, even if she somehow foresaw, Catherine is my wife, not a queen. She cannot simply claim a crown that doesn't exist. Crowns can be created, a new voice said from the doorway. King Edmund entered the chamber slowly, looking older and frielier than Catherine had ever seen him. His eyes were fixed on the necklace around her throat. "When the need is great enough." "Father," Alexander stepped forward in concern. "How long have you been listening?" "Long enough," Edmund replied, his gaze never leaving Catherine. "Long enough to see what I've been too blind to recognize." He moved closer, studying her face with intense concentration. "You look different wearing it. Stronger, more regal." Catherine bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I never intended to overstep." "You haven't," Edmund interrupted gently. "If anything, you've given me clarity I haven't possessed since Isabella died." He turned to his son. "Alexander, our kingdom faces challenges you haven't fully grasped yet. The northern provinces are on the verge of rebellion due to failed harvests. Our treasury is depleted from funding wars that accomplished nothing. The people are losing faith in the monarchy itself." Alexander's face showed his shock. "Father, I had no idea things were so serious. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I couldn't bear to admit how badly I've failed since your mother's death," Edmund said quietly. "I've been ruling from grief instead of wisdom, making decisions based on my pain rather than the kingdom's needs. But seeing Catherine wearing Isabella's necklace, it's as if a veil has been lifted." Catherine touched the sapphire again, and suddenly she could sense the full scope of the kingdom's problems. Images flashed through her mind. Hungry children in villages she had never seen, merchants struggling with unfair taxes, farmers watching their crops fail, while politicians in the capital debated meaningless protocols. "The Northern Rebellion," she said suddenly, the words flowing from some deep source of knowledge. "It's not really about the failed harvests. They're angry because the grain reserves that should have been distributed to them were sold to foreign buyers to fund the war effort. They feel abandoned by the crown." Edmund stared at her in astonishment. "How could you possibly know that? Those reports were kept strictly confidential." I'm not sure," Catherine admitted. "The necklace shows me things. I can see Lord Garrett, the northern governor, sitting in his study last night, writing a letter of resignation because he can't bear to tell his people there's no help coming." "That's impossible," Alexander protested. "Lord Garrett would never." A sharp knock interrupted him. One of the palace guards entered and bowed deeply. "Your Majesties, forgive the intrusion. An urgent messenger has arrived from the northern provinces. Lord Garrett has sent his resignation, and a warning that rebellion may be imminent unless immediate aid is provided." The guard's words hung in the air like thunder. Alexander stared at Catherine with a mixture of awe and fear. "How did you know?" he whispered. Catherine closed her eyes and let the necklace's influence wash over her. More visions came, detailed images of what needed to be done, conversations that could prevent disaster, alliances that could be formed. When she opened her eyes again, she spoke with quiet confidence. "Send word to Lord Garrett immediately. Tell him emergency grain shipments will depart within the week, along with master farmers, to help develop drought-resistant crops. Also inform him that all war taxes levied on the northern provinces are hereby forgiven, and that I will personally visit to hear the people's concerns." "Catherine," Alexander said carefully, "you don't have the authority to make such promises." "Then give me the authority," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Not as your wife, but as someone who can see what needs to be done and has the will to do it." Edmund studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Alexander summoned the royal council. Emergency session. "Father, surely you're not considering." "I'm considering what's best for our kingdom," Edmund said firmly. "And for the first time since your mother died, I can see a clear path forward." He turned to Catherine. "My dear, Are you prepared for the responsibility you're asking to assume? Catherine touched the necklace one final time, feeling the accumulated wisdom of generations flowing through her. I'm prepared to serve, Your Majesty, in whatever capacity you deem appropriate. Then, you shall serve as Queen Regent, Edmund declared, with full authority to make the decisions necessary to save this kingdom from the disasters my grief has created. Alexander stepped back, as if struck. Father, you can't simply crown Catherine queen. There are laws, traditions, protocols. There are also precedents. Lord Reginald interjected quietly. Queen Melody herself was elevated from duchess to queen during the crisis of succession 4 centuries ago. Emergency powers can be granted when the survival of the realm is at stake. The council will never approve, Alexander argued, but his voice lacked conviction. Catherine could see through the necklace's influence that several council members were already aware of the kingdom's dire situation. They would support any solution that promised stability and prosperity. Some will resist at first, she acknowledged. But when they see the results, when the northern provinces are peaceful again, when trade agreements improve our economy, when the people regain faith in the monarchy, they will understand. You're very confident, Edmund observed. I have good advisors, Catherine replied, touching the sapphire. The best advisors a ruler could ask for. As if in response to her words, the necklace pulsed with warm light, and Catherine felt the presence of every wise queen who had ever worn it. Isabella's spirit seemed strongest among them, offering encouragement and strength for the challenges ahead. The transformation was complete. Catherine had entered the chamber as a princess struggling to find her place. She would leave it as a queen with the power to reshape a kingdom. But first, there was one more obstacle to overcome, and it was standing right in front of her, wearing the face of the man she loved. The royal council chamber had never felt more charged with tension. 12 of the kingdom's most powerful nobles sat around the ancient oak table, their faces ranging from curious to skeptical to openly hostile. Catherine stood at one end of the table, wearing Queen Isabella's sapphire necklace, while King Edmund sat in his ceremonial chair and Alexander paced behind the gathered lords like a caged wolf. This is unprecedented, declared Lord Blackwood, the Treasury Minister, his voice dripping with disdain. We cannot simply elevate a princess to Queen Regent because she puts on jewelry and claims mystical visions. The kingdom's laws are clear, added Lady Ravencrest, the Minister of Protocols. Succession follows bloodlines and established procedures. What you're proposing violates centuries of tradition. Catherine remained calm, feeling the necklace's warmth against her throat. Through its influence, she could sense each council member's true concerns, some genuinely worried about legal precedent, others afraid of losing their own power and influence. Honored ministers, she began, her voice carrying an authority that surprised even herself. Tradition serves us well in peaceful times. But these are not peaceful times. While we debate protocols, our people suffer. Pretty words, sneered Lord Blackwood. But what makes you think you can solve problems that have confounded this council for months? Instead of answering directly, Catherine turned to Lord Harrison, the trade minister, who had remained silent thus far. Through the necklace's insight, she could see his hidden knowledge, information that could change everything. Lord Harrison, she said quietly, please tell the council about the Valdres trade proposal. Harrison's face went white. Several other council members looked confused, but Catherine could sense their growing attention. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Your Majesty, Harrison stammered. The proposal that arrived yesterday, Catherine continued, her voice gentle but implacable. The one offering to purchase our northern grain reserves at triple the current market price, with immediate delivery. The proposal you haven't shared with the council because you're afraid it sounds too good to be true. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. King Edmund leaned forward with interest. Lord Harrison, Edmund said sternly, is this true? Harrison's shoulders sagged in defeat. Yes, Your Majesty. But how could she possibly know? Catherine touched the sapphire, feeling its steady pulse. Because I can see what others cannot. The Valdres proposal isn't too good to be true. It's exactly what we need. They're offering high prices because their own harvest failed completely. They're desperate for grain, and we have surplus sitting in our southern warehouses while our northern people starve. That's actually brilliant, whispered Lord Pemberton, the agricultural minister. We could sell the surplus to Valdres and use the profits to purchase grain from the eastern kingdoms, where the harvest was abundant. We'd make enough to feed our people and have funds left over for infrastructure improvements. How did she see that connection when none of us did? Lady Ravencrest asked, her skepticism beginning to waver. Because she's wearing the necklace that guided Queen Isabella to greatness, King Edmund said firmly. The same necklace that helped our kingdom prosper for 15 years under Isabella's wise rule. Lord Blackwood scoffed. You expect us to believe in fairy tales about magical jewelry? I expect you to believe in results, Catherine replied calmly. Lord Harrison, if you implement the Valdres trade immediately, how long before relief reaches our northern provinces? Harrison was frantically calculating in his head. If we sign the agreement today and dispatch wagons immediately, grain could reach the northern settlements within 10 days. And Lord Garrett's rebellion would likely dissolve overnight, Harrison admitted. Hungry people rebel. Fed people celebrate their wise rulers. Catherine could sense the shifting mood in the room. Several council members were beginning to see the practical wisdom of her approach, even if they remained skeptical about its supernatural source. There's more, she continued. The Eastern Kingdoms have been seeking an alliance against the growing threat from across the sea. If we approach them not as desperate buyers, but as prosperous trading partners, we can negotiate favorable terms for both grain purchases and mutual defense. Lord Ashford, the defense minister, looked up sharply. What threat from across the sea? Through the necklace's visions, Catherine could see ships gathering in distant harbors, armies training for invasion. The Crimson Isle Confederation is planning an assault on the mainland kingdoms. They believe we're weakened by internal conflicts and failed harvests. If we unite the Eastern Kingdoms in a strong alliance now, we can present a unified defense that will deter their aggression entirely. This is incredible, breathed Lord Pemberton. If even half of what she's saying is accurate. It's all accurate, interrupted Alexander, speaking for the first time since the council session began. His voice was strained, as if the words were being pulled from him against his will. I've seen her insights prove correct repeatedly over the past hour. Things no one should know, solutions no one else could see. Catherine looked at her husband with surprise. She had expected him to be her strongest opponent in the council. You support this? Lord Blackwood asked Alexander incredulously. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his internal struggle visible on his face. I support what's best for our kingdom, he said finally. And I've seen enough today to believe that Catherine, wearing my mother's necklace, can provide guidance that none of us possess alone. But surely as heir to the throne, you should, Lady Ravencrest began. I should put my kingdom's welfare above my own ambitions, Alexander cut her off. My mother understood that true leadership sometimes means recognizing when someone else is better suited to lead. Catherine felt a surge of love and gratitude toward Alexander. Through the necklace's influence, she could sense that his support came not from weakness, but from genuine wisdom and love for both her and their kingdom. Very well, King Edmund said, rising from his chair. I call for a formal vote. All in favor of granting Queen Regent status to Princess Catherine, with full executive authority to address our current crises. The vote was closer than Catherine had hoped, but decisive enough, 8 in favor, 4 opposed. As the results were announced, she felt the weight of true responsibility settling on her shoulders like a royal cloak. Your Majesty, Lord Harrison said respectfully, when shall we begin implementing these new policies? Immediately, Catherine replied. Lord Harrison, send word to Valdres accepting their trade proposal. Lord Ashford, prepare diplomatic envoys to the Eastern Kingdoms. Lord Pemberton, coordinate with both to ensure our people are fed while we build these new alliances. As the ministers began to file out, Already deep in discussion about implementation details, Alexander approached Catherine. They were finally alone except for King Edmund, who was studying them both with keen interest. "I owe you an apology," Alexander said quietly. "When I saw you wearing her necklace, I felt like you were trying to replace my mother. But you're not replacing her, are you? You're continuing her work." Catherine reached out and took his hand. "I could never replace Queen Isabella, but I could try to honor her memory by serving our people with the same dedication she showed." "The necklace suits you," he said, touching one of the sapphires gently. "It looks like it was made for you." "In a way, it was," Catherine replied. "Not just for me, but for whoever would wear it with the right intentions." King Edmund approached them, his face showing more life and energy than Catherine had seen since she'd joined the royal family. "Isabella would be proud," he said simply. "Of both of you. Alexander, you showed true nobility today by supporting what was right over what might have been easier. And Catherine," he paused, studying her face. "Catherine, you've given me hope for the first time in 2 years. Hope that our kingdom will not only survive, but thrive." Over the following weeks, Catherine's reign as Queen Regent proved the wisdom of the necklace's guidance. The Valdres trade deal prevented rebellion in the north while generating enormous profits. The Eastern Alliance deterred the Crimson Isle invasion before it could begin. New agricultural techniques shared between allied kingdoms improved harvests across the region. But perhaps most importantly, the people's faith in their monarchy was restored. They saw a queen who listened to their concerns, who made decisions based on their welfare rather than political convenience, who wore the sapphire necklace not as a symbol of power, but as a reminder of responsibility. Alexander proved to be Catherine's strongest supporter and most trusted advisor. Their marriage, which had begun as a political arrangement, deepened into a true partnership built on mutual respect and shared dedication to their kingdom's welfare. 6 months after that pivotal day in the memorial chamber, Catherine stood once again before Queen Isabella's portrait. But now she wasn't alone. Dozens of citizens waited outside the chamber, seeking audiences with the Queen Regent who had become famous for her wisdom and compassion. "Thank you," she whispered to Isabella's painted image, "for showing me what it truly means to serve." The necklace pulsed warmly against her throat, and for just a moment, Catherine could have sworn she saw Isabella's painted lips curve into a gentle smile. The legacy continued, carried forward by new hands, but guided by the same timeless principles of service, wisdom, and love. As Catherine prepared to meet with her people, she touched the central sapphire one more time. The stone was warm, as always, but now she understood that the warmth didn't come from ancient magic. It came from a knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. The sapphire legacy lived on, and Catherine was no longer its guardian. She had become its newest chapter, writing her own story of service and sacrifice for future generations to follow. The kingdom was safe, the people were prosperous, and the crown, though it had taken a different form than anyone expected, rested on shoulders strong enough to bear its weight with grace and wisdom. Some stories end with coronations and celebrations. This one ended with something far more precious, the quiet satisfaction of a duty well performed and a people well served. Queen Isabella's necklace had found its new home, and the kingdom had found its future. The transformation was complete, and the real work of ruling with wisdom and compassion could begin.